That one scared me.
That'd be about this tall here. At least, you know, that tall.
I'm getting nervous, but this is where I saw this being.
Landed and I yelled. I realized that there was no one there. He just vanished in plain sight.
Morning, but it's always around deer season time.
Just a yelling, like a like that.
And he said, whatever's out there, that was big. I said, see, I told you there's something out there. Whatever's out there, that was big. I said, see, I told you there's something out there.
Ah, yes. There's something out there. But what is it? Last time we told you the stories of Este Capko, Bigfoot. And this time we have more stories. What you're going to hear is eyewitness accounts of people that are telling you what they believe to be the truth. What they saw, what they heard. I saw their faces, and I believe them, but you're the judge. The funny thing is, as was mentioned in the last episode, it always seems to happen around deer season. Well, it's deer season.
I'll just start off introducing myself. My name is Carlin Thompson. I go by Jono, my middle name. I'm a language instructor here at the Muscogee Creek Nation. And there's a lot of stories like that out there where I grew up at, along that creek. I used to could hear them late at nighttime. They'd be, you could hear rocks being thrown. You could hear it sound like, you know, kids playing with sticks, kind of like a baseball game. You'd hear rocks being thrown. You could hear something hit, you know, like a tree or something being slapped, you know. And some say that might have been what they call Este Capko, you know, Bigfoot. I just, whenever I was younger, I just assumed it was the Stillabochkis, the little people. And I've heard things walk up behind me when I was, me and my nephew, we had went out hunting. We was rabbit hunting. And we got a late start, was out there probably evening time, you know, enough for rabbits to kind of run around. And we had walked, and my mom had always told us, she said, you make sure you're across the creek, on this side of the creek before sun goes down. And I had, me and my nephew, this is a different nephew, we had walked around for, you know, probably a good couple of hours. Didn't catch any rabbits, you know, didn't see nothing. And so sun was starting to set, and I told my nephew, I said, well, we better get back home. And as we're coming back home, we kind of got turned around, we got lost. And they say that Este Capko, if you get on his trail, they say that'll make you forget, make you get lost and forget where you're going. And so we came to this little small creek, the little stream that was dried up, little creek bed. And I said, this is the same creek, this will run back into our big creek behind our house. And so I said, let's just get in this creek bed and we'll just walk it back to the house. And so we did, and before we got in there, my nephew, he's, you know, 5 or 6 years old, he says, look, he said, all these rocks, they're set up funny. And there was 3 big rocks that was set up, just, you know, kind of made like a triangle. And I said, yeah, that is funny. And I didn't pay no attention to it, and we just got back in that creek bed, and we walked on back. And we walked for about 20 minutes or so, and my nephew said, he said, shouldn't we be home by now, and why aren't we home yet? And I said, well, you should be there any second. I still didn't recognize nothing. I didn't understand how we got lost. But we kept walking. I said, we'll just stay in this creek bed, and we'll make it back to our creek, and we'll go home. And then he stopped, and he looked, and he said, boys, those are the same rocks. And I looked, and sure enough, there's those 3 big rocks, like a triangle. And we had walked a circle, but yet we never got out of that creek bed. That whole time we was walking straight, but somehow we came from behind where we first started. And so I kind of got a little freaked out, and the sun's below the trees at this point, and So I grabbed my nephew and we just kept on walking. We just went straight east until we made it back to our house. But there's a lot of stories like that out there. I've heard a lot of our elders talk about Este Capko and Muscogee, different things like that. And so that's just some of the stories that I've had that I can think of off the top of my head, anyways, that I've experienced in my lifetime.
Doing some dirt work and some road work. There's only about 3 of us working. We were all separated. I was taking tractor down one road. Other boys were taking skid steers out down the other roads. Middle of July, I believe, so it's hot. And there's a creek that runs right through the road that I was working on, and it's spring fed. So you know how that cold water is coming off springs. And at that time, the tractor didn't have any AC. And so I parked that tractor right in the middle of that creek and hopped out and picked my shoes off and was walking down the creek bed. But there was some of the boys out there has found arrowheads out there. And so I was just looking around. And it had just rained. We just had a good rain. So that's why I remember. And so that creek bed is usually dry, but at that time, like I said, it had 4 or 5 inches of water in it. And the way this creek laid out was it was super flat all the way across, maybe 50 yards wide. Was the creek bed itself. The water was only 20 yards wide, but the timber around it was super flat for the most part until it got, I don't know, 200 yards in front of me, and then it shot up this big rock bluff. Probably 60, 70 feet. I mean, it was.
So it was that tall?
Yeah, it was high. I mean, probably as tall or taller than any of the oak trees around there.
Yeah.
And I was out of the tractor for about 10, 15 minutes. Just I had my head down looking for arrowheads, cooling off. I was walking away from the tractor, so my back was towards the tractor. And I heard something. It sounded like big sticks breaking, big limbs breaking. And I looked up, and 150 yards where that bluff started to shoot up, I saw this tree on the very top of it, kind of shaking, and these decent sized rocks. They weren't no boulders, but they were decent sized rocks, probably watermelon sized, rolling down that bluff.
Like something disturbed them? Or?
Well, at the time, like right when that happened, I didn't think it was nothing. I thought it was just loose soil from that rain that we had. And I turned around and was walking back towards the tractor. So I was facing away from that big bluff. 35, 40 seconds went by, and I heard this great big splash. And I don't know if you've ever heard rocks hit another rock in water. It has a distinct noise. And it was great big and loud. And I heard it hit rock, and I heard it hit water as well. So I spun around real quick, and I don't know, it's probably 30, 35 yards max from where I was standing. I mean, water was shooting up in the air about 10 foot. And I saw the rock that had been, thrown, rolling through the creek bed, right in front of me. It was probably watermelon size as well. I mean, nothing I could move any kind of force, really. But from where it was 100 yards, 120 yards from that bluff. So that it wouldn't have fallen from the bluff. And from where it landed, it was flat all the way around.
From that bluff where you seen the tree moving and stuff?
Oh. That's it was nowhere close to that. So that rock had to be thrown by something. And no human could cause that big of a splash from that rock, and how that rock was just tumbling through that water in that creek bed. I mean, I don't think no person could throw that rock like that. So
at that point, did you get scared, or what'd you do? I mean,
before it really hit me, I was like, oh, it's my coworker messing with me. But where we're working at, I mean, it is nasty terrain. I mean, the roads are terrible. You could hear people coming from a long way. There ain't nobody out there. ain't nobody gonna sneak up on you. You'd hear them in a vehicle. And so at first I kind of thought it was him just messing around with me. And so I kind of meander thought, and I don't want to, at that time I was like, I ain't gonna let him think I'm scared of him.
Yeah, 'cause yeah.
So I just started meandering back to my the tractor, but I had a sense of urgency. And as soon as I got in that tractor, it realized, I was like, there's no way that could have been him, because where that rock came from was straight thicket. I mean, nobody in their right mind's going to go through that thicket where it's probably snakes and ticks and greenbrier all through it.
Where that rock hit, was the area flat?
Yeah, it was completely flat. There was no
So it
elevation.
couldn't have rolled down a hill
No,
from any direction.
there was no elevation from where that rock could have came from. It was completely flat all the way across. But like I said, it was where the elevation where that bluff was 120 yards away from where that rock was. Not even anywhere remotely close. Getting in my tractor, and I hauled all the way back to where our office was. It's probably a little long. It's probably a 45-minute drive.
So you were way.
I was way back there. It was probably a 45-minute drive in the tractor, going about 15 mile an hour. Probably 10 mile average.
Yeah.
Back there. So it's a good 3 miles through, I mean, roads that suck. I get back there and I'm just kind of meandering, because I kind of in the back of my mind might have hoped that it was my coworker, but I was asking, I was like, "What'd you do today?" And he's like, "Oh, I just worked off this backside road over here," and he showed me where he's pointed to where I was working, and I knew he was serious, and I knew he wasn't even anywhere close to where I was. It kind of freaked me out. I stayed away from that area for a while. I didn't go back, especially anywhere close to dark. I didn't want to go near that area. I don't like if we were working during the day, and I quit working and it was getting dark and I had to go by that area when it was getting dark. I wasn't going to work there, like by that area. That was the western side of the property where that happened.
Uh-huh.
And it was
Did you tell anybody that?
No, I didn't tell nobody. But it was about a week later. I was on the eastern side of the property, probably, and this was an hour tractor ride. It's about an hour tractor ride. So I'm way back. I'm in the farthest main road. There's a few little roads that go back a little bit farther, but they're not even drivable. And I was in the farthest main road that goes back there. And it was middle of the day, and I was driving. I was in a truck this time. Obviously, I look through the timber when I'm driving, just because
For deer and stuff?
for deer,
Yeah.
and there are elk out there, so just to see whatever I could see. And
This was at night, right?
no, it was middle of the day.
Oh, okay.
It was middle of the day. I was going back to the ranch. I was done with work, so I was headed back to the office so I looked to my right through my passenger door, and I saw someone out there walking through the timber. And the timber's pretty open. Grass isn't too high, maybe middle to shin height.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not too tall. I go to stop, and I glance real quick, and this figure, it's not walking, it's standing still,
Mm-hmm.
and it's facing towards me. I couldn't tell you how tall it was, or if it was, abnormally large, but it was a man figure, big enough I knew it wasn't small. It wasn't very dark in the timber, but that figure was dark. The whole thing. I don't want to say black, but in my mind I can see it, and it is black. And I stop, and it's just standing there. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, all these thoughts are running through my head, and I'm like, there's no road except the one I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no trucks on it, no vehicles.
Yeah, like so where somebody parked or something.
Yeah, there's no one's on that road. And it's probably a 4-mile walk in any direction to get to any other road. So there's only one way to get to where he's at, and it's on this road, and nobody's on it. There's no vehicle. And like I said, it was black all the way from head to toe. I didn't see a hat. I didn't see skin. I didn't see any bright colors, blue jeans or nothing. It was straight black. And so down I went. So I just left and hauled butt. And that hour drive took me about 30 minutes.
Julian, Julian B. Watson. I'm a Muscogee Citizen, recognized as a Goodwill Ambassador through some of my travels and experiences over the years, and I'm a real honor to be a part of what the shooting today's shooting is, and just with all respect, just want to share these things. So where we are at are, I guess you could say, kind of northwest of Muscogee, and what they call Gun Club Road, and this is my Sasquatch experience. I would say about 12 years ago ish. I'm driving down this exact road. My relatives live over here. We're over by one of the old native churches. I can't remember the name exactly. I think it's always changing, but we're on Gun Club Road, and on that particular day, I happened to be driving home. Cousins are over here having dinner, and I was, okay, I gotta go home. We'll see you guys later. Love you. Gonna go home. So over here, there's a pond, and let me see here. It's really pretty, really big pond. So I've always wanted to drop a line, and every time I go over to my cousins, I'm like, man, I gotta have my fishing pole. So I sneak over here and throw some lines. So I'm almost there, and I start to, just see it and get excited. I'm going slow like this because there's ridges in the road, and it's, some of us that drive these back roads, they know that they can be pretty dangerous. A lot of people end up sliding off the road and crashing, and so it can be really dangerous. So I was probably going about this speed. I was saying, check that, 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, and dreaming about fishing. And all of a sudden, there's a hawk that came down just right on the side of this tree line, and the trees weren't even that tall at that time. But here's the pond, and I'm like, okay, yeah, wow, okay. And then somewhere, the hawk comes down, and it's really squawking, and I'm like, whoa, man, this is really close, and not something I see every day. So I'm like looking at the pond, wow, just like this, back and forth to the road. Woo wee, or possible a butter in there, alligator possibly, but I'm like this, and all of a sudden that hawk, just almost like a 45-degree angle, just right here at the end of this tree line at the end of the pond, makes a beeline, north, and I'm going like, whoa, I wonder what happened, because it just was like, boom, it's gone. And as I'm right here, this next pecan tree that's coming up, I'm getting nervous, but I this is where I saw this being, and it stood up, and it was already on the side road, because I would have noticed this was someone walking across the road. But if someone could imagine someone, if you're on a basketball court and you're behind somebody and they do a layup, that's what the image that I seen. But it was the back of the head and the shoulder, but the color of it, and it was like a long fur. I wouldn't say it was like long hair, but it was like a long fur, and it looked like a horse, the dark red of a horse, brownish, and that's what it reminded me of, the color of it. And I seen muscles of it, again, the side of it and the back of the head, and so when I got to this tree, I told myself, okay, I'm gonna see a horse, I think, on the other side of the fence, because there's a fence there, and I saw it jump. I mean, just like literally like how a person would do in a layup. And I told myself, there's an open field here. Okay, whatever it was, when I get there, going slow, I'm gonna see whatever it was, because it's an open field. A few trees back here, but when I got to this tree here, there wasn't anything there. And I looked. I wanted to make sure as much as I could, and there wasn't anything. And I stopped to look, and so I was like, okay, yeah, that would logically make sense for me to see something. And when I look and see what it was, and then I think about some of the other folks that I've heard speak about some of these beings and their connection to trees and the land, the only thing that made sense to me after that was that being And this is where it sounds extravagant, I guess, but it was like this person jumped into the tree, or this being jumped into the tree. And I've heard elders say that they can do some type of transcendence like that. They can ascend like that. They can, teleport. I don't know. I'm jumbling my English words trying to find it, but that almost like a vortex, I guess you could say, for lack of better words. But that's what it looked to be and happen. And it's like you question yourself, like, what happened? But this is what it was. So I'm like, again, I sharing it with you, and yeah, that's where this is it. I don't know what else to say, but it happened, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to come out here again and visit, but it wasn't really like a scary thing. But it was just like a wow, kind of just you're at a loss of words when you see something or experience something like that. And I have some extended family, Pawnee folks, up by Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and oh man, I'll say about 15 years ago, we go up. It was winter time. I think we always have a winter solstice sweat. So we were up there at that time, and let's say we got done, had our dinner, said our departure, meadows. I mean, they're just good sweat, good ones. So on our way back home, which is a good way off 75 highway goes up there, and I would say it was about 2:00 a.m. So I made a call to my wife, and I said, hey, it's wintertime. At that time, we lived down south here. We had a wood stove, didn't really have like central air, things like that. So we were always excited about wintertime. But I called and said, hey, we're good 2 hours, 2.5 hours away from home. So just letting you know, we're done here. We're on the road. And as I'm talking to her, I have two of my cousins with me. And it's actually the same cousins that live down here in this place that I was referring to earlier. But my cousin, he goes, what is that? And of course I'm on the phone, but I hear him, and he says, what is it? And his older brother says, what is what? That right there. And again, it's about 2 in the morning, but we saw a juvenile, I guess, a young Sasquatch. I would guess about maybe 5 feet tall, and it was a bright night, really bright night. I don't know if it's full moon, but bright night, and you could see this. I mean, I'm just gonna say a person. I mean, it you could see it, definitely a silhouette. It was a dark figure, and it was probably, I ain't saying probably, but it looked to be maybe 10, 15 feet in front of us. And the reason why I think we got to be that close to it is, again, the time, winter time, a lot of deer. So out there, I'm going slow. So we watched this juvenile walk across this street, and probably right where that fence line is too as well. Good maybe 10 yards. There's a hill just like these kind of go up. The hill, it went up, and this being stood on top of that hill, turned around, and looked at us. And you could, by that time, again, in a bright night, this silhouette, I seen the body of it, and it just kind of basically looked like a younger person, I would say a male, I guess. But on this one, I could literally see the long hairs like waving in the wind off, and I'm gonna guess they were about that long, but you could actually see the hair on this thing like waving in the wind. And there was some what they call or what's that called, reflection, when you get it off the animal's eyes, reflect off the headlights and things like that. Eye shine, I think they call it eye shine, but you could see that. And that was like a white kind of amber kind of tone, light yellow. I remember that, you know what I'm saying? I remember the hair, and it it wasn't really a scary feeling, but I think the next thing my cousin said was, well, if that little one is around, you better believe the mom or dad is around here somewhere too. So, with all the chills I had, I'm not going to just, because again, where we're at, deer, all that. And if someone else was there, I didn't want to hit anybody. But here we go, you know what I'm saying? And I guess it lasted about a good 10, 15 seconds. But it was hard to see at first, being that close to it. And again, we weren't even 10, 15 yards away from it, and it walked upon us. And we were just, still to this day, it's like, whoa, what, would that really happen? So, I got 2 witnesses too, so they're out there, and I would just, my thing is just respect them, and if they got something to share with us, we need to embrace it. And
Okay, my mom had told me this story years ago. I was probably 11 years old. Right now, she's 87 years old, and this happened down in Batiste, Oklahoma. That's where she grew up. And she's told me that one evening they went to church singing, and they were on a mule. They rode a mule. Of course, back then, not everybody at all had cars. And so they're coming back, and it's dark. And they're on the road, and all of a sudden, the mule, he just stopped. And he wouldn't respond to any commands or anything. He wouldn't move. So as they're getting down to try to get him to move, with the bridle and stuff, my mom happens to look behind him, and she said there was something standing there in the road. The background, it had a little bit of light. Otherwise, it was pretty dark. But beyond where this thing was standing, you could see the opening of the road. And she said that they got scared because it was just standing there watching. And she described it as not about the height of an average man, but she said what she remembers is the shoulder width. She said its shoulders were super wide, and it was just standing there watching them. And they couldn't get this mule to move. My mom said she got behind it and was, pushing it from behind, and her cousin, who she was with, was yanking on the bridle, trying to get it to move, and it would not move. And she said it seemed like it was in a kind of like a trance. It wouldn't do anything, wouldn't respond in any way. And she said they could hear a truck in the background coming up the road. And they still couldn't get this to move, the mule to move. And then she said they began to see the lights coming like from behind where this thing was, and it was that truck. Well, by this time, when they looked back, it was gone. And then the mule began to respond to their commands. And it happened to be the girl who she was with. It was her older brother. And they told him what they had seen and what happened. And he was with his brother, so he ended up having his brother take the vehicle home, and he took the mule home. So they rode home in the vehicle. But she told me that story years and years ago, and she don't know what it was. And a few years later, she was going to Tahlequah Sequoia boarding school, and they on a Friday evening, when everybody else was in the dorm or in the gymnasium watching a movie, they were in a dorm. They had gotten in trouble for some reason or another, and they decided to sneak off to the store. And so they went to the store, and there was a shortcut through the woods. So as they're coming back, somebody said, "There's something behind us," and they all looked back. And my mom said she seen it. She seen something. It was like the same thing that she seen in Batiste, except she said this one was a little bit smaller. And she said as soon as they seen it, they all took off running. And I had asked her, I said, "Did you look back when she took off running?" And she said, "No, they just ran up all the way back to the school. And when they got to the fence, they hopped the fence." But I asked her, I said, "Was it like chasing you guys?" And she said she didn't know, because they never looked, nobody looked back. I guess they were too scared, and they made it back to the school and probably never went back to that store again. But that's coming from my mom, who's 87 years old. Told me that story years ago.
Don't worry, it's just me. Well, it seems that our friend Este Capko seems to make quite a few appearances here on the Muscogee Reservation, especially during deer season. But these next few stories, according to them, Este Capko may not be the only thing out here. He, or she, don't want to be sexist, may not be alone. I may not be alone. Well, I hope to be back at the end. I hope to be.
I had a story about Este Capko. We call it in the language Este Capko. Some say Este Capko. When I was about 12 years old, I grew up in Hectorville, Oklahoma, out there by Duck Creek Ceremonial Grounds. And I was about 12 years old, and I was clearing out some of our pasture. We had just bought 3 horses, and we was just going to put them out there, build a little holding pen, and we was going to clear that land. It had a lot of rocks on it, a lot of rocks and some timber. And so I was out there picking up rocks, and I was throwing them down the creek. And our creek was on the northwest side of our property. My sister and my nephew had came over, and they was playing off in the distance. He was about 6 or 7 years old, and where I was standing, I was west of the house, between the house and the creek, and he was playing off in front of the house, and I could see him where my angle was. And off to my right, on the east side, there was a pond that was being dug that never got finished being dug. And he was playing. He was wearing a red shirt and khaki pants, or khaki shorts. And off to my right, on top of that hill bank where that pond was, there was another boy, and he was wearing a red shirt, but he had khaki pants on. And I looked at him, and he was still over here playing just like little kids do, turning around in circles and hollering. And this boy over here, he wasn't moving. He was just standing there. He had his gaze fixed on my nephew, just watching him. And I looked at him for a little bit, and I figured out what I was looking at. And so I yelled his name out loud. And he turned around and looked at me and said, "What?" And as soon as he answered "what," this other boy off to my right in front of me, he kind of glances over his left shoulder, and he looks at me, and then he books it back towards the woods. And he headed south back down towards the creek. And our creek, it wasn't like, like some of these other creeks. It was really rocky. There's really tall boulders out there, huge rocks, and it was dry. This is during the summertime, so our creek was pretty dry. And growing up, I played out there a lot. So I don't know why, but I chased that little boy. He's about the same size as a 6 or 7 year old. But I chased that boy down the woods, down towards the creek. And back then I knew the layout of the creek, the rocks, different things was coming in. And different let's see, what do you call it, timber that had fallen over. I knew which rocks would turn over, which boulders was there, which where the dead ends were, and I got real close to touching him. I was probably about just finger lengths away from touching this little kid, and he was fast. And at the time, I could run and jump, and I jumped over these rocks, and I was right behind him, and he had turned. And where he had turned at, there's a 9 foot tall boulder there, and it makes a wall, and where that wall is, there's a cup in it, where he would get trapped. And so where he was headed towards, I knew that was a trap. And so I thought I had him. And so whenever he turned that corner, I was right behind him, and I jumped over this tree that had fallen over. I jumped from that tree, and I landed on the ground like this, and I yelled, "Ha!" like I got you. I yelled really loud, and I don't know why I was going to catch him. And but whenever I landed and I yelled, I realized there was no one there. He just vanished in plain sight.
I'm JD Hanslovan, and this is my story. So, about 16 years ago, I was, me and a buddy of mine, we were walking through our hometown of Verdigris, Oklahoma. It was one of those high school nights where walking, sneaking out late, whatever, and going to tour the town. And we were just walking around town, kind of a normal thing to do in Verdigris when there's no police department, anything like that. So it was we were heading actually back home after a long night. It was about 3:30 in the morning, and we were walking. So basically, give a good picture of our roads and like where I live. There's 2 connecting roads, and then there's a basically like a cul-de-sac at the end of them, so they connect to each other. We were my house is right here. We were on the road behind my house. We were walking back the back way. And we were right when we turned down that road, we were walking down. There's one light pole about 30 yards in front of us. And out of the corner of both of our eyes, we're sitting shoulder to shoulder walking down the street, and look out of the corner of our eyes, and we see this little figure about hip height at the time. And it started coming right up the edge of the asphalt, about to cross the street. And the only thing, we both froze in silence. We didn't really know what was going on. Saw this little figure. He starts running across the street, and right when he got to the other side of the asphalt, it was running on 2 legs. Right when he got to the other side of the asphalt, it jumped, and about 8 feet away from there, it jumped clear over a chain link fence into a tree. Right then and there, we were both still frozen, didn't say a word. Right when it hit that tree, we looked up and we saw, it looked like at the time, mind you, this was 16 years ago, thousands of like birds coming from that tree, and just right above us, like something spooked them as well. So we obviously knew something that was not right. We looked at each other and we took off running. We ran, mind you, we were right at the beginning of that road. We took off straight to my house, and that's when right when we got to the house, calmed down a little bit, and we both spoke to each other like, "Hey, what was that? Like, what did we see?" And I looked at my buddy Tyler and just said, "Hey, can you describe that to me? Anything like that?" And it wasn't definitely not like this. We were puffing, we were shaking kind of. And he described it the same way I did. The only thing that we could think of is like a demon. Short in stature. It obviously wanted to let us know that it was there. And by the way that it jumped into that tree and scared all those birds up, it obviously wanted to intimidate us somehow. So that's the only way I can put it. We both described it the exact same height, how it was running, and the only thing that we both caught on to, and which our stories matched up, is the way it was running. And that's Its feet were leading in front, and its head was behind, and his arms, it was like lanky arms, kind of like a little human, and but just the way it was running, that's what threw us both off.
So I was actually deer hunting. It's public walk-in, and so there's no vehicle access, and it's only foot traffic that goes through this public land. I was off, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile off in the timber, off the main highway. I was in this pasture, and the way this timber sets up was it makes a V, and in the middle of this V is hay meadow, and these deer like to run at the very bottom of the V of that timber. And so I was set up there, and I could watch this whole hay meadow and each side of the timber. And so from the farthest ends of the points of that timber, between them, that hayfield was probably, I don't know, 150, maybe 200 yards across. And right in the middle of it was a blackberry bush. And it was pretty stout blackberry bush. It was 4 or 5 foot tall and maybe 10 yards long at the most. And it was getting dark. I hadn't seen nothing. I hadn't seen no deer. But I was just kept my eyes on those hay meadow, see if there was anything moving through there. A lot of pigs run through there as well, so I'll keep my eyes out for that as well. It was about 30 minutes before dark, and from my right side of the timber, I seen something start running across, and it was a person figure. Only this person stood 3 foot tall max. It wasn't very tall, and it had longer black hair. I can't remember how long, if it went all the way to its shoulder blades or longer, but it was, I remember, long black hair, and it had either dark brown or almost black cloth around its, probably up to its knees, and up. And the distinct thing I can remember was it didn't have black skin, but it didn't have like regular skin. It was very dark colored skin, and it was running from the timber thicket to that blackberry bush. And the thing I remember was its knees were in front of its body when it was running, almost sitting in its chest. And I saw it clear as day. The grass is only 6-7 inches tall out there, and it was up to its knees, almost up to its knees. And it was probably 100 yards max from the tree I was sitting in, and I saw it clear as day running across that field, and it went right into that blackberry bush, and I could see all sides of that blackberry bush. And from the time I saw it to wait after dark, my eyes were locked on that blackberry bush. That did not leave my sight. I watched it the whole time, and it never came out. I never saw it again. The way my truck was it was going back towards where that blackberry bush was through the timber, and so I took the long way around. I went straight back, got way a mile that way, and then cut back to my truck. Since then, I haven't been back out there, and I've talked to other people. They've told me what they think it is, and sometimes I don't believe myself, but I think I know what I saw.
JD had told me a story that actually happened to my son, involving what we think was the same thing, which he told me his story first. And then it was, I don't know, a couple months later, my son had told me he had seen something that sounded identical. And what's weird about that is JD had said that the way it was running was almost comical, but at the same time kind of creepy, because its legs was in front of its body. And so I had asked my son if it was running, what he seen was running weird also, but I hadn't told him about JD's story. And I asked my son if it was running weird, and he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Was it running like a person does, or was it running different?" And he said, "The only thing, its legs was ahead of its body." So that kind of tells me it was maybe not necessarily the same thing, but it was maybe of the same species or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
So,
No, and so that raised the hairs on the back of my neck because I'm like, well, maybe is it me? Like, why is this thing like? It's like if it's just us two, surely others have stories similar like this. But now I've seen it. I've heard about it now 3 times. I've seen it once with my own eyes, and I think it's something that needs to be looked into a little bit more. Maybe more people have stories out there about this figure, but it's the only way I can describe it is in both my words and my buddy's words. It was the closest thing I've seen to like it, sort of like a demon.
Well, that's it, folks. That's all we have for you this time. But I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed bringing it to you. But now you have to answer the question. Do you believe them? The people that just told you their story, they believe they're telling you the truth. But do you believe them? Well, either way, the sun is setting, it's getting cooler, and the deer are running. But out there, somewhere, is Tall Man, Este Capko, Bigfoot. He's waiting. And if you're out there, maybe if you see him, maybe you can tell him, "Hey man, you're a big star and everybody's talking about you, especially us." So from the Muscogee Creek Nation Office of Communications, I'm Mark Abbott. Mado for watching. By the way, I've been letting my beard grow for about 2 weeks now. You think I'm ready for deer season? I hope.
And do you have anything?
just that, whatever it was my son seen.